Hi, friends. Welcome to the Sales Enablement Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Paul. Now, today, in this special episode, we're introducing what will become a regular segment on the show, Selling with Science. Joining me as my guest is Jeff Shelton. He's the Vice President of Product at ringDNA, and Jeff is the leader of a team of data scientists that analyze millions of phone calls that are made through the ringDNA platform to spot trends and mine insights that can help you have better conversations with your buyers. Now, today, Jeff is going to share some interesting data around call connection rates during this COVID-19 shutdown era. And we're going to tell you how these connection rates compare to the connection rates during what you might call the normal era that we lived through before. And we're going to talk about what the implications are for you, the seller, in terms of when and how you should be making your calls to engage with your prospects. Okay, let's get into it. Jeff Shelton, welcome.
Thank you, Andy. Great to be here.
So on this episode, you're going to help us analyze some data about call connection rates sort of during this COVID-19 shutdown period and maybe how they differ from what was going on beforehand. So tell us a little bit about how you collect and analyze the data.
Absolutely. So ringDNA is a sales engagement platform. We have sellers around the world. We have sellers who have now gone from inside sales teams to deployed working from home. We provide sales insights, we provide playbook execution, coaching on top of the volume of activity that those sellers are making on a day in and day out basis. We record calls at a tune of millions a month across a number of different industries, a number of different verticals. And we provide performance metrics for those industries, for the supervisors to get a keen understanding into what's happening within their teams. This is all rooted in productivity and really interested to talk about kind of what we're seeing in the platform post-COVID.
Excellent. Yeah. So one of the topics that I was really curious about and your team dug into was how are call connection rates differing during this work from home era versus before the work from home? And what are we finding?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we define a call connection as a conversation. It's a call for a certain number of minutes. It's a call based off of the unique disposition values that our sellers use to encode what happened on that call.
So in this case, for something to be considered a connected call, how long does the call need to go?
Call here is about 90 seconds.
Okay. So just so people have that, we're talking about connection rates on calls that once they're connected last at least a minute and a half. Okay.
Absolutely.
And what are we finding in terms of the connection rates now versus before shutdown, early March?
So we've seen a shifted pattern overall across our platform. We've seen a general increase in the connection rates. We've seen a marginal increase across a number of different verticals and types of callers that sellers are reaching out to. So whether it's a manager, a director, someone in the C-suite, individual contributor, everything is relatively elevated in terms of connection rates. What we're seeing is a distribution of the peaks and valleys of those connection rates based on just the shifted schedule that people have in front of them by virtue of having to work from home.
Yeah, and we're talking about the shifted schedule of people that are receiving these calls, which I found very interesting. So it seems like, that there's a sort of misalignment between when the calls are being made and when people are really picking them up, meaning that it seems like sellers are still sort of stuck in the same calling pattern they had when they were in the office, but actually now customers are picking up differently.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely astute and on the nose. We look at two different things. We look at the volume of calls that our sellers are making, and the patterns are pretty consistent before COVID and after. We see the standard distribution of call volumes over time, starting with the highest call volumes are usually in the morning, roughly at the 9 to 11 a.m. mark. We then see a dip around lunch and then a drop off, tailing off in the afternoon. All of these metrics, by the way, are relative to the local time of the seller. Mm-hmm. What we're seeing, though, is a difference in behavior of those that they're calling. We're seeing that where we used to have a trough of a decreased pickup rate at 1 p.m., we're now shifting that earlier to about 11 to 12. So there is a little bit of a disjoint in terms of reacting and adapting to the times to which we're getting the highest pickup rate. So whereas the sellers are not changing or deviating from their behavior, their callers really are. And so we need to adapt to that.
Yeah. And So what this really means, in essence, is for sellers is you need to shift your call volumes. You got to start work earlier, quite frankly, an hour, maybe even 90 minutes earlier to, don't take as long to get into your sort of flow and be making your calls. Is you may need to get on the phones, 7:30, 8 o'clock, because when you think about the home patterns, and we're sort of conjecturing about why this is the case, but certainly your customers, if they're in a work from home environment, is their life patterns different, right? They're they're no longer commuting, they're no longer getting their kids ready for school. Is school's happening on site. Is they're available at different times.
Yeah, I mean, if I would think that, if someone say leaves their house at 7:30 in the morning to drive to work, that commute time's cut out. Typically, their commute is a minute to their home office, wherever that is, and off they go. And so we are seeing that pattern where recommendations for us are sellers should start early because of that dip in connection rates, which can be significant at that 11 o'clock hour. Take a lunch as late as possible if you can. If you start earlier and compress that activity in the morning, because we've seen that drop off around 11, we've seen the downstream drop off in the afternoon. We have to adjust, and our sellers have to adjust their activity to align with the callers they're trying to connect with.
Yeah, and especially again, if your customers, men and women working from home, that kids are done with their online schooling at 2, they got to keep people busy, right? During the next few hours before dinner, they may be less available.
Yeah, and this is magnified also with sellers with different territories. When we think about someone being in Los Angeles calling someone in New York, it's more important to make sure that we're moving east to west down a client list. So, something that we have in our platform is the ability to understand the local time of someone that I'm calling. And so when I have a number of calls I'm making during the day, I'm also stack ranking and making sure that I'm calling people based on their local time too.
Right.
So yeah, east to west is the way we need to move. That'll ensure that you get the highest pickup rate.
And interesting, another thing though that's part of this data is that we're finding that even though you're getting greater connection rates, is it's not necessarily leading to more meetings.
Yeah, not necessarily. So we've seen a slight dip in meetings being set. I mean, for us, we're able to coach and extract and kind of understand the reasons why. I mean, we can see within the calls that we're coaching and the calls that we're analyzing where COVID comes up or work from home comes up or budget constraints come up. We're seeing that earlier in the cycle. Also, we're seeing that with the SDRs mainly before they get into kind of later stage conversations with AEs. And so understanding not just the connection rates, but why meeting sets may be a little soft is really important. Something that we found for our own internal teams is we've had to rapidly shift the context and the script of how we're reaching out to people and what's resonating. That's heightened and that's more important too. So if your messaging is off, if you get that connection rate, but you're not providing that value prop or something that resonates with that person, we're finding that earlier.
Well, I think there's one other thing that I would add to as a non data scientist, as a seller, is looking at the data, is that there's an opportunity here, and the opportunity is I'm going to define my own metric, because we've been talking about call connection rate. I'm going to talk about connection rate, which is these are opportunities to build a connection with another person. Is it may not today for a variety of reasons you talked about, for budget, businesses being in a state of flux, they don't know what their plans are, they can't commit to anything necessarily. Is this is an opportunity as a seller, if more people are picking up the phone, is the ability to build connections that are going to pay dividends in the future. So you're starting that conversation. It may not lead to the meeting being set that you want, but you are building that connection, and there's value in that. So it's really important to pay attention is when you have that opportunity and you're getting more people to talk with, even if it doesn't lead to the next step right away, you are building the foundation for something going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the importance there goes into the follow up. How responsive we are after this and how we can be trusted advisors as sellers. Even if that doesn't lead to anything, today, it could lead to something in a month, 2 months, hopefully when things get back and, we're kind of over this change. And so this is something that I completely agree with you in that, we need to understand the efforts here in the longer picture,
Exactly.
from the human side as well. I would even infer that, the pickup rates are a bit higher because we want to talk to people. We want to engage with others, but it's really about shifting that mindset into how is this going to impact the long-term pursuits and the 3-month and the 6-month windows.
Right. And if people are picking up because they do want to have this human connection, is be that human for them, right? You may have a script you're following. Yeah, maybe discard the script as you just want to connect with this person. This is a valuable asset for you as a seller, is this connection you're making with someone compared to your competitor that's, not going to act the same way, not going to be as human in this moment. You have an advantage. So the next time you call back, to Jeff's point, as we start moving forward and companies get more comfortable in terms of returning to a normal business state, they're going to remember that conversation they had with you. And that's going to stand out in their mind. The next time you call, they're going to be more inclined, I believe, to set that meeting.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. And we'll look forward to doing this next time.
Thank you, Andy.